The second chapter in The Honeymoon Won't Last Forever is sex is the first thing to go. Remember what I said in the first chapter, that the demands of daily life soon overrun the happiest of marriages. And sex is usually the first thing that is martyred in the fight for the demands, being able to fight for one's life over the demands of daily life. So, sex in the take home messages, there are 3 for this chapter. Number 1, sex is usually the first thing to go in both happy and distressed marriages. Let me say that again. Sex is usually the first thing to go in both happy and distressed marriages. Low desire, number 2, low desire, lack of sexual gratification, and marital conflict easily reduce marital sex even further from what is reduced because of the demands of daily living. And then number 3, the solution: regular, satisfying sexual activity is vital to the health of a marriage. Notice that carries over from chapter 1. You need the physical and the emotional intimacy. And unfortunately, sex is typically the first thing to go. And part of that is because of people's idea about how sex is supposed to go. And so, in a space or in a relationship where sex is mostly about drawn out activities meant to increase emotional connection and typically say called lovemaking, there can be a lack of agreement about the time that might be necessary to carry out those high emotional sexual experiences. There can also be a lack of agreement about the energy that is needed to carry out those high emotional sexual experiences. And then there can also be disagreement about the order of carrying out those high emotional sexual experiences. Okay. So, for example, when a person is used to a lot of time because of the sexual energy that has brought together and bonded a couple, typically who prior to marriage, right? That sexual energy is not necessarily sustained. That high level of energy is not necessarily sustained after the couple falls into the rhythms of everyday life. And so, without awareness that energy is going to diminish, without some help, without some intentional behavior on the part of both spouses, then the couple can find themselves questioning what has changed in the relationship that makes the energy go down, rather than working together and talking together about solutions for how do we now intentionally keep this energy up, when before the energy was kind of natural, because that's kind of how the mammal species works, to get people together in order to procreate, to keep the human race going, right? And so now we got you together, we got you married, you're cohabitating, and now some of that sexual energy is going to go down. And unless you use that big brain, that big human brain that we are known for, that makes us human, to figure out how to keep that energy alive. And so part of the solution of keeping that energy alive and keeping it high is adding definition to what it means to have sexual contact. So if drawn out high emotional, high energy sexual experiences is your norm, you might have to think about how can we get in some lower energy, high interest activities in order to keep the sexual energy itself high and to keep us having sexual contact. And so we might have to do different things on a more frequent basis in order to have that physical sexual intimacy than time allows to do the high emotional, high energy, high time experiences that we prefer. We may have to define other smaller energy, smaller time experiences that we can enjoy that keeps our passion going. The other idea is when we have date night. Date night is great, and we should definitely have date night because it goes back to that time when we need to spend together, right? And so one great way to spend time together is having date night or date day or whatever. But understanding that when you go out of the house or you go and do a different activity, that's going to require some energy. And so you may need to use that energy that you would go to the movies or go to dinner. That energy might be best spent sometimes having high energy, high intimacy, high emotional intimacy, sexual contact. So rather than saying, okay, well, let's go to the movies first, or let's go eat dinner first, or let's go to the club first, and then drag home and use whatever energy we have left for the sexual contact, maybe you need to do the sexual contact first. And maybe that might be what you end up doing. That might be the date night. And then also, don't forget, waking up, we wake up in the morning, early in the morning, to do all kinds of things, right? To pray and to read and to clean house and to exercise, right? We can wake up early in the morning if, you're a morning person, to give the first day's energy to the sexual contact. So don't be afraid to prioritize your sexual intimacy, because that's typically the first thing that goes. Having conversations, having discussions, making agreements about ways to reimagine your sexual life in the face of the demands of daily life, whatever it costs, right? Whatever the demands of daily life are, don't leave that conversation about sexual contact and sexual intimacy. Don't leave that for last. And certainly then don't leave the actual act of sexual intimacy for last. Prioritize it. Put it first on the schedule and keep your sexual intimacy bond intact, even as you go through the trials of life.